Hey everybody, DIY Dad here. Welcome back to the channel. I'm here in my daughter's bedroom because I'm about to embark on a new DIY project of installing something like this, these lights, to the outside of my castle, my home. And what I found is the learning curve to do this is very advanced. It goes almost straight up. There's a lot of stuff to go over. So I thought I'd give you all the benefit of the amount of work I've put into trying to figure out how to do this. And in this video, we're going to talk about all of the pieces and parts necessary to do a permanent LED programmable light installation on the roofline of your home. Okay, so if you're looking to do this project, then you've probably been surfing around a little bit on YouTube. In fact, you would have had to have been, or you wouldn't have found this video and you wouldn't be watching me right now. And what you'll find is there's a ton of information out there on how to do this, but all of it's very technical and very difficult to digest. What I'm going to try to do is break this down into the simplest components and talk about what you need to know to approach this. You can get much more complicated if you're looking to do large sync to music things, and we might get there eventually, but this is going to be about just that initial entry point. So first, let's talk about the components that you're going to need for this to work. To accomplish this project, you need three main things. You need your lights themselves. This happens to be what's known as an LED strip. These also come in strings where they look more like your traditional Christmas lights. You're going to need a power supply or possibly multiple power supplies, depending on your install. We'll talk about that more as we get deeper into the project. And then you're going to need a control board. This is the brain for your system that's going to tell the lights when they should turn on, how bright they should be, and what color they should be. So let's start with the lights. As I mentioned, lights come in either strips, like this one, so just one long strip, or in strings where it would be individual bulbs connected by looped wires between them. They have their benefits and negatives to each. For my install style, because I want to hide this as much as possible so that when they're not on, they aren't visible at all, I chose to go with strips for that. And when you get into strips, you're going to have two main kind of styles of them and then a bunch of variation. The main style difference that you have is a concept of waterproof and not waterproof. And that has to do with the look of this. So if you look at this strip, you'll notice there's a kind of a dome that covers and blocks the lights themselves. Each of these little circuit board buttons is our actual LED lights on my strip. This little rubber protective dome that goes across the top makes this a waterproof strip. There are also non-waterproof, and they'll be a lot thinner than this, and you'll actually be able to feel the LEDs rising up above them. Now, the reason you need to know the difference between those is it impacts how you install them. If you're going to have these out in the elements and subject to moisture, having a waterproof strip is going to be the way to go, but you have to keep that in mind when you deal with things like the connectors that you need, because those also have to be able to accommodate the extra thickness that comes with this strip. Now, when you get into strips or lights themselves, you also have a question of whether or not those LEDs are addressable. This strip happens to be an addressable strip, which means I can control individual lights on this strip, or in my case, groups of lights on the strip for my particular display. There are also non-addressable strips. Non-addressable strips are more like what we have in my daughter's room. The strip that's on my daughter's bed is a great example of a non-addressable LED strip. It happens to be waterproof. I decided to go that route just because it's a kid's bedroom and I thought that'd be a little bit safer for everybody involved. But this light strip is treated as one entity. The strip is either completely on or completely off. It's all one color, all one brightness. I can do things like set the color for the strip. I can have it rotate through different colors, but what I can't do is say I want this half to be red and that half to be green. It's not going to allow me to do that. It has to treat it as one thing. An addressable strip allows you to address individual lights on the strip to say I want an alternating pattern, or I want to be able to turn on and off selective lights. With addressable strips then, you either have individually addressable strips, so each independent light can be controlled as its own thing, or you have what this is, which is a grouped strip. So in this particular product, each set of 3 lights is treated as one logical bulb. So these 3 pieces together are addressed as one thing. So this has 300 little chips on it, but they're grouped into sets of 3. So this is considered a 100 light strip in my software and in the way this gets programmed. Now there's still some patterns that allow it to fade across because of some of the technology that's involved with this. But if I were to say, turn on light 1, it's going to turn on just 3 of these circuits, and that's what we'll have. Now this strip also happens to be a 12 volt strip. When you get into any of this technology, your power supplies, your controllers, or your lights, you're either going to be working in 12 volt or 5 volt. The difference with those has to do a lot with ease of use and how far you can go before you have to add additional power. So I can have a set like this where I have multiple strips connected all the way around my house. But at a certain point, there's going to be enough resistance across all these LEDs that we're going to not have enough power to power additional lights. They're going to start to flicker and turn off. With a 5 volt setup with lights like this, you can get about to the end of a single strip before you have to add power. So about every 15 to 16 feet, you're going to have to add power. Now, if you're only lighting something that's pretty small, and 15 feet gets you all the way around the door or window or whatever it is that you're trying to light, this is a really simple way to do it. You can actually run a 5 volt power supply into your controller and have this then chain directly into your lights. It's all self-contained, life is good. A lot of what you buy from like a Home Depot or a Menards, that sort of thing, any of your home improvement stores are going to be 5 volt built in with that in mind. And you're gonna see them usually in about that 16-foot length because that's where the power starts to fall apart. This is a 12 volt. In a 12 volt setup, we can go a bit further than that. I can get about 3 strings before we start running out of power, which means I have to inject power, we'll talk about that in a later video, approximately every 50 feet or so. Now with my house and the way these lights are going to run along my roof line, that creates a much more convenient install for me than having to run them every 15 feet. So it made my life simpler, so I decided to go that route. Now it did complicate a few things because most of the controllers are 5 volt. So when I went to power supply thought, I had to separate that. I have a 5 volt power supply that's going to power the brain, and I have a 12 volt power supply that's then going to power the lights. So if you wanted to use a 12 volt power supply and a 5 volt controller, you're going to have to do a step down resistor to bring that voltage down, or you will fry the controller. Now there are some control boards like this one, which will accept a 12 volt power supply directly. This is an ESP32, it's called. I'll have some links to these down in the description. And we're gonna do a later video to talk specifically about the differences between these boards and how you configure these out of the box. Each one of these costs a max of about $8. So I think this one is an ESP8266. That one cost me, I think, $5 on Amazon. These were each about $8. They come as just completely unprogrammed devices. They do all have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth built into them. And there's free software that turns these into the brain that needs to turn your lights on. And that goes to kind of an important distinction with LED lights. When you're talking about addressable lights like this, and really any RGB color changing LED system or software or program or product, rather, that's the proper word for that you're working with, just adding power to this doesn't usually turn these on. So it's not like a light bulb where I can add power and they turn on. You have to add power and you have to tell them to turn on. So when you look at the wires for these, ignore these 2 little wires, that's for power injection. Let's just focus on these 3. So I have a red, a green, and a white. The red is my positive 12 volt. You can actually see that if I look. So this is my 12 volt, that lines up with my red. So that's going to be the actual power supply. The green, the one that's in the middle, is my data connection, which you're seeing here as DO. That's my data connection. And then the white is going to be my ground. So this green wire that runs down the center of the plug is what's going to turn on or tell each of these lights that needs to actually be powered or not, and what color they should be. That wire is what gets fed from my control board. So we'll talk about that when we get into the controls a little bit more. So speaking of control boards then, there's two main styles of these that you're going to look for, and they're all referred to as a node MCU. Now this is the same circuitry that you're going to find in a lot of your smart plugs. So any Wi-Fi connected device that you're buying for a smart home application has something like this at its core. It's a developer's board, it's a programmer's board, it's used open source in a ton of different products. It has a free software package that you can apply to it, as I mentioned, that makes it useful for this. The main thing you need to understand about the difference in these is the ESP8266 will control about 1,000 bulbs with good speed, good performance, everything else, and it starts to slow down pretty drastically. The ESP32 allows you to do multiple channels and can go quite a bit further than that. So it's a question of what your install is. If you're looking to do the roof line of a small house, your ESP8266 is probably going to be just fine for you. If you're looking to do something that's much more involved, like a big, one of those synced to music setups that you see where they have lots of lights that act like a TV screen on the outside of their house, that's going to be more the realm of the ESP32 to allow you to have that power and that kind of throughput. Then it just becomes a question of voltage. This guy, as I mentioned, is a 5-volt setup. So for powering that, I use a 5-volt power supply, and then my lights are 12 volt, so those come off the 12-volt power supply. Basics of that setup is I'm bringing the data wire off of here into the lights. I'm bringing power off of here into the lights. I'm bringing power from here into the actual control board. And then the last thing that you have to do for this to work is you have to bring a ground off of here into the lights as well. It's the contact between the ground and the data wire that allows it to understand this, and they have to be on a common ground. So if you're doing a setup like mine, where you're doing separate power supplies for each, you have to run that extra wire. If all of this was 5 volt, if these were 5-volt lights, I could just run 5-volt power directly into the control board and then come off the control board straight into the lights, and I'd be done. I'm a little bit more complicated than that. So there you have it, as promised. All you need to make a system like this work really is a power supply to power the lights themselves, and the brain to actually tell the lights what to do. Now I'm going to be walking you through every single step of installing this on my home and doing some videos of the final product as well. So stay tuned to the channel for that. I'll keep you along the route as we go. We'll talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of actually doing this, and hopefully have it in place in time for Halloween. So this being the end of a DIY dad video, I do owe you a dad joke. And since it's the middle of October and getting pretty close to Halloween, I thought we'd go with something that's seasonally appropriate. So what do you get when you divide a pumpkin's circumference by its diameter? Pumpkin pie. Right, remember with any DIY project, most important step is just to do it. No one's going to see the flaws unless you point them out to them. If you're interested in more information about this particular project and you want to follow along with my progress, please do subscribe to the channel. Feel free to leave me a comment if you have any questions. I'm by no means an expert in this, but I will let you know what I've found out as I go through fumbling my way through this one. For the rest of you, please take care. Catch you on the next one. See ya.